And welcome to Two Great Goatees and a Whistle. I'm Coach Huddy along with Coach Gonzo. And in this episode, we are going to talk a little more about the Ted Lasso effect. In this case, we're going to talk about a particular book that was written called What Would Ted Lasso Do by Lucy Broadbent. And this is a book that I read, and one of the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast was because of this book. And I actually got a copy of the book, gave it to Gonzo. So Gonzo's read it. So he's been through it. So we're going to kind of talk about it, how it relates to coaching, and just in general, how it can relate to anything you got going on in life. Because I think it's the principles from this book carries not just for coaches, but for anybody. So let's get started. All right, today's episode, this is going to be more talking about how to deal with loss, losing games, how you react to those situations, and how your mentality and how your perspective you take can help you become a better leader and a better person and build those relationships with your players. So again, the book's called What Would Ted Lasso Do? And the author was Lucy Broadbent. And I thought she did a really good job citing different philosophers and psychologists and other people to back up these claims. So these are all legitimate claims and stuff that go along with the book. So, all right, why does Ted Lasso, fictional soccer coach from a comedy show, matter in real locker rooms? Because he changes the way we think about leadership. The whole purpose of that show was to show a different side of being a leader and how empathy and building relationships and how that becomes important and not just the wins. This guy walks into a sport that he knows nothing about, builds relationships instead of power trips, transforms a team by focusing on the human being before the athlete and what coaching should be about. Okay, I'm trying to think here. Let's see here. So let me tell you about the time that I had a player miss 3 practices in a row, and I was ready to bench him. But instead of coming in hot, I asked him what was going on, found out his family had just been evicted. That day, I stopped being just a coach. I became someone who would listen. That's Ted Lasso leadership. So that's just an example. And I think we do this in teaching too. What goes behind when they're not around us. I think that we take for granted that their world revolves around us, especially coaches, because the sport means so much to us that we think that that should be the same for the player. And it's not always the case. If they're having to worry about whether they got to eat at night, it's a different world. And so the whole point of this is stop being that coach and if you want to be a great coach and a great leader, you have to be willing to listen to your players. So some of the segments from the book in the show, there's a thing titled I Believe in Hope and I Believe in Believe. So that's one of the key points of the show is the term believe. The 5 biggest reasons, the book and the show, how it hits home in the world of coaching. Number 1, optimism is a superpower. Bad seasons, lost a big game. Ted Lasso smiles and says, we'll get them next time. As a coach, how we react to adversity sets the emotional temperature for the whole team. I truly believe that. If you're the coach that's just losing their ever-living mind on the sideline, your players are going to react to that. Through the worst time, you have to have the most levelest of heads. If you're losing your mind because things are going bad, and the players see that, they're going to feed off of that energy. So through even the worst, crappiest times in the game where another team's going on a run in basketball or your kids are false starting or missing tackles in football or whatever it is, your composure plays a huge part of that. Any thoughts on that?
I think they have to read you, and then they're going to react how you're reacting. We see it all the time.
So your emotional thermostat is for the whole team. So how you have, for example, this person's second year in coaching, ate great football, and went 0-5. When they celebrated every small win, one good block, one hustle play, the next year those same kids went undefeated because you're seeding positivity. Okay. Usually the first couple weeks of the season, how well your season's probably going to go. If you've been coaching long enough, you know what your talent you got. Okay. But talent doesn't always win games. We know that. Okay. If you can plant that positive feedback and keep things as positive as you can, that doesn't mean you don't get on kids when they need to. But if you can try, it's about the small wins, right?
If they believe in it.
And they got to believe in it. Believe in people before they do. Ted believes in his players when they are benched, broken, and bitter. Coaching is about seeing what they can be, not just what is. So an example of this is a player who couldn't catch a cold in a snowstorm, but kept throwing him routes in practice. He caught the game winner by game 6. You could see the moment he believed in himself because you did first. So that player that he's too small, right? But you see him busting his butt every day in practice, and he gets rewarded when he gets into that game and makes that tackle. You know, those are the moments that you live for.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of some examples?
I just think of all the time when you have to. The biggest thing I hate is when you have to cut kids.
Yeah.
And you're telling freshmen and sophomore kids, 22 of them when I was in Twin Falls, that they're not good enough to play as a freshman. And and you got 2 days of watching them during the tryout, and it's tough.
Yeah. That would be rough.
I think a lot of kids, you believe in them, they'll start believing in themselves.
Yeah. And that goes, in middle school, where we've coached quite a bit here, it's the kid that's 5'2" and barely 100 pounds soaking wet,
playing center,
or playing football for the first time, like we had this year, right? That kid had the biggest heart out there. And
terrible taste, though, for football.
Sorry, Arlo. But, just the fact that he stuck it out, and the last half of the season, he was contributing big time on the field.
He used to be a soccer player, but he wants to play football.
He loves the game of football.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I think believing in the people before they do. So, being able to, regardless of who they are, regardless if they're player 1 or player 12, believe in that 12th player. Okay, they are putting in the grind just as much as player 1 is, right? And believe in them, and that constant practice can end up rewarding itself later on down the road, because not everybody gets there at the same point, right?
No.
Right? Everybody gets there at different times.
And girls get there faster sometimes
than boys. Yep. Number 3, vulnerability is a strength. Ted talks about therapy. So, in the book, and it comes to light in the show, and it's brought to light in the book about mental health and how the stigma behind mental health, especially in men, and how much of an issue it has been over the years, and how it's finally starting to come to light about the importance of mental health. And that vulnerability is key. So when Ted talks about therapy, he cries, he admits when he doesn't have the answers. That's not weakness, that is real leadership. Sometimes that old school mentality really shies away from that, understanding that you, as a coach, you're not going to have all the answers. The same thing is for teachers.
Yeah.
I've had questions told to me, like, hey, what's this? I don't know. Let's look it up together. So you're curious. I'm curious. Let's go figure it out. Okay, you don't have to have all the answers as a coach. And I think that people need to understand that. We don't have all the answers, okay? Whether you've been coaching for 30 years or 2 years, okay? You're still learning. And if you're not learning, then you should quit. Yep. So the tip from this is let your team see you struggle too. I once told my team about the time I blew a game as a player. They respected me more, not less. So it's okay to tell the kids that, hey, I wasn't one of the starters on my varsity team, right? Hey, it's okay to say stuff like that. Number 4, lead with kindness and empathy. Kindness isn't coddling. It's coaching with care. It's calling players out and checking in after. So an example of this, you have a hot-headed linebacker. You gave him tough love during filming, and then you text him later to say, hey, I'm proud of how hard you're working. Never forget that. So that doesn't mean that you don't get on kids when they are making mistakes.
For new coaches, you better do a group text when you do that.
Yeah. So, but it's okay to have kindness and empathy as a coach. And I think that's not just in coaching, but in life. Empathy is not weakness. I think people need to understand that.
Not be afraid to tell kids you love them either.
Yeah, don't be afraid to tell kids you love them. Yep, it's okay. All right. And probably one of the best moments of the show, and you haven't got there yet in the show, but and they talk about in the book, it's be curious, not judgmental. All right. So that was something from Walt Whitman, I believe is where he's pulling it from. This is Ted's golden rule. Don't assume that you know the player's motives. Ask. So an example, a player missed warm-ups. I was about to chew him out. It turns out his little brother was having seizures, and he stayed with him until help could be there. So ask first. Don't assume why that person's late or whatever. Don't make assumptions because you make an ass out of you and me, right? All right. So the next segment we're going to talk about is the Ted Lasso effect is not soft. It's smart. All right. So let's land this plane. All right. Here we go. Start practice with a belief huddle. One player shares a positive compliment, a quiet kid on the team. One moment might be a highlight of the week. Post Ted quotes in the locker room. Be curious, not judgmental. Model failure. Run a drill wrong on purpose, then laugh about it and fix it together. So there's some things that you can do to some practical practice plans.
Asking after every game what you saw was good.
Yeah, win or lose, what happened, right?
Did you see that was good? Someone did something good. I know they did.
Yeah, talk about that practice, games, everything. Have a breakdown and try to pull something positive, even out of the most worst games when you experience.
And when you start that, at first they're not going to say anything. I mean, but after you do it a couple of weeks, like every girl or every guy on your team is going to be raising their hand, finding something that they saw good from someone else. It turns out to be pretty cool.
Yes, it is. So I think as we close this out, I think coaching isn't about yelling the loudest or being the smartest in the room. It's about showing up, believing, having humility, have a little humor. And I think Ted Lasso and this book, and there's a lot more to the book. I'm just skimming over the book. It's a great book. If you guys want to get out there, I'm really promoting the book.
You sure you have like 2 or 3 hours free because you won't want to put it down?
Yeah.
You'll finish it all at one day.
Yeah. It's not a very big book. So, and I'm all about not big books. It's a good read. It's called, like I said, I'll say it again. It's Would Ted Lasso Do by Lucy Broadbent.
One other thing is be ready to think about yourself and about things you've done in the past. And it really makes you think about yourself. And not just as a coach, as a person, as a parent, as an employee.
Yeah, and one more thing that we haven't really talked about is about one of the things about the show in general and about the book is about forgiveness.
My toughest thing.
And that is key. You got to be able to forgive not just other people, but yourself. And that's another thing that gets brought up in the book and the show. Because I can tell you in the show, and you haven't watched the whole show, there's some things that were down and dirty done to people in the show, but the key to that was forgiveness. And to me, that's one of the hardest things to do, but it's being the most rewarding. All right, that's it for this episode. We're going to close out with our mascot. Okay, all right. We're going to take you to Price, Utah. Okay, just south of us here, right? Dino country, right?
The dinosaurs.
They are the dinos. The mascot from the Carbon High School in Price originated from abundance of dinosaur fossils.
Didn't we stay there last year?
No, we stayed and we went by Dinosaur National Park.
Okay.
But we were, yeah. But was it Price? I don't think it was Price, was it?
I don't know.
I can't remember the name of the town. I don't think it was Price, but it was, yeah. But Dinosaur National Park's is part of Utah, right in the Utah-Colorado border. So, yeah, that's the mascot. So, Price, Utah, and the Carbon High, that's where it originated. If you ever get down there to Price, if you're into dinosaurs,
that park's awesome.
It's a cool park to check out, too.
Go early in the morning.
Yeah, get there in the morning. We went in the springtime one year, over spring break, and it was still There's some parts of the park that weren't open.
Last year was hot.
And we went last year in the summertime. And it was hot.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty cool. You see some pretty cool stuff. All right. I'd like to thank Coach Gonzo for being on the show. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time. All right.
The dinos.